John. Now we have quite a number of questions coming to the panelists, and I saw quite a number of them. I can see George already had quite a number of them. He has already answered one through by typing. But George, if you are still there, I can see you are still very much there. You gave quite a good introduction to what is going to happen. I can see Fumbuka asking if there are arrangements with regard to support African countries' transition to low carbon economy. And I can take a number of them, then you speak at a go as you answer them. I can see also Kenyi Bagi, this is from South Sudan, asking how can we get support in developing our RED plus strategy? How can we get support in developing our RED plus strategy? So George, if you are listening, please, I know you have noted down these questions, take over and try to answer them. Welcome.
Yeah, sorry, Philip, I was running another meeting, apologies. Yeah, but I've responded to some, but let me go back. I think for Gerson, I think I clicked without any. Yeah, I think what regarding the low carbon economy, the requirement is if you look at the Paris Agreement, and particularly Article 4.1 as read with 4.4 as read with 4.19 and 2.1c, all countries, all parties are encouraged to develop their mid-century long-term low emission and climate resilient development strategies. And this is intended to provide a long-term thinking and view and development pathways through which now the country can realize through implementation of the NDCs. So Gerson, the point is that countries are supposed to have communicated their long-term strategies, low carbon by 2020. Many countries have started the process, and we are supporting some. And Philip, who's moderating here, can tell you that he has done some work for Kenya at sectoral level agriculture, but also feeding into the economy-wide process which is underway. And therefore, Gerson, it's a requirement for purposes of ensuring that you have clarity up to when your emissions are going to peak, and to enable you to identify short, medium, and long-term climate actions within the framework of NDC. You require that long-term low emission and climate resilient development pathways or strategy. Regarding the RED plus strategy, I think there are opportunities right now, which is, for example, under the Paris Agreement, RED plus is embedded in Article 5 of the Paris Agreement, but also in Article 6, which we're talking about when you're talking similar to CDM type. Now, what we have now is, in order to establish the result-based framework, the Green Climate Fund set aside 500 million for countries to develop RED plus projects to pilot how to realize the RED plus, and therefore, in my view, depending on your country, if you have a RED plus strategy, then go to the Green Climate Fund, and you'll be able to see what is required of you for purposes of applying and accessing those resources. And then the one on NDCs, yeah, NDCs are very important vehicles. But I also want to emphasize that if you read very carefully Article 4, which provides for the NDCs, you realize that it actually deals primarily with mitigation. And although as Africa and as a region, we have said that we want to include adaptation in the NDCs, the only actions that will be considered under the NDCs are adaptation actions with mitigation co-benefits. Those are the ones that will fall within the context of the NDCs. Now, Vitu, yes, I know this is a very difficult area where, you know, the reality is adaptation, although we say is a priority, but under the Paris Agreement is voluntary. And that's why you can see that the Africa group is trying to see if it can remedy that challenge by one, getting Africa to be recognized, their special needs and circumstances to be recognized, and by so doing, therefore, raises the profile of adaptation. Although it's going to be difficult because the idea here is that we made a mistake in the Paris Agreement. But also the second one is the global goal on adaptation, because if you look at Article 7, paragraph 1, very carefully, you will see that it links the adequacy of the adaptation efforts with the temperature goal, which is the mitigation. And therefore, it follows that once we start unpacking, we get an agenda item on a global goal on adaptation, then it follows that, therefore, we may now be in a position to clarify and bring the level of issue of adaptation to that level. The only challenge we have is that in the Paris Agreement, which is the instrument under which we're operating, the adaptation is voluntary, and we communicate through adaptation communication, and even as we do the NAPs, NAP as NAP is a process. So even if you have a NAP, it's not recognized under the Paris Agreement in terms of as a product. What is recognized under the Paris Agreement is the adaptation communication through which you will be, countries will be sharing how they are progressing in respect to adaptation actions, and then through Article 13, which is the enhanced transparency framework, where we are looking at how we are making progress in adaptation and against the need and the support received from development partners. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much, Dr. That's very elaborate. I think you answered those who asked those questions. Before John, you disappear, you have a lot of congratulations for the good presentation you've made from the audience. But there are some anonymous attendee, or those who do not want to be implicated, but they have some questions for you. Number one is that what is the government of South Sudan doing on extreme weather events, especially the current floods and the Sud? So you mentioned about 7 states under effect of floods. Maybe that's what the anonymous attendee wants to know. Then the second one that you need to combine with that is that my question to John is, South Sudan is greatly depending on oil production. Is there any plan to build up the capacity of youth in preparation for the climate mitigating in all the 10 states? Yeah, maybe this is coming, you are taking youth to Glasgow. Maybe that's what you want highlights on. Please, can you go ahead and attempt to answer the 2 questions? Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you so much, Philip, and thank you, colleagues, for that. One of the things that I would like to answer first is regarding to the question that has been asked. I have 3 questions. One is on what is the government of South Sudan doing actually on climate extremes. You see, one thing that I would actually like to highlight is that the Ministry of Environment, since the establishment of the Ministry of Environment in 2011, we have been having different institutions. And under it, the Meteorological Department has been under the civil society, under the Ministry of Roads and Bridges, civil aviation. institution. And apart from that, recently the government of South Sudan has actually come up with some of the strategies. But before coming back to some of the strategies, I would like to highlight some of the key projects that we are actually working on, which are actually aim at addressing the issues of climate, mostly looking at the events of floods. And also at the same time, he has also talked about the issues of flood and the suits, looking at the impact of that flood on the suit. Maybe that may be the reason that he's talking about. So, and I would like to say that the Minister of Environment, with the Minister of Water Resource, and also with the Land, are actually working on one of the projects. The first project that I would actually like to highlight is on the project on board flood management projects, which is actually being funded by the Land government. And it is actually having a total of 13 million euro. And the main reason, the main purpose of that project is actually to build on dike. And this is one thing that I would like to know, that the only solution toward these floods within some of the areas which are along the River Nile is actually to build a concrete prevention floods measures, putting in place the dike, and also at the same time creating water channels within that. While at the same time also, I would just say that the government of South Sudan recently also launched, mostly particularly in Jonglei states, to actually construct a permanent dike between the ARC and the government of Jonglei state, and also at the national level. And that project is being championed by the office of the president. While at the same time, the third one that I would actually like to highlight on what is the government actually doing on the issues of the extreme weather event is that we are actually working to establish early warning systems that will be used actually to focus on issues of event that happen, whether looking at the flood, looking at the drought, looking at other diseases which are happening within the area related to the climate. So this is the other one that we are working on. But the major cause of this flooding in South Sudan is actually regarding to the siltation of the River Nile. The River Nile actually has having this huge siltation because of waste, and also because of some of the garbage that were actually deposited into the River Nile during the struggle of the war from 1983 until now. There were a lot of tanks that was actually destroyed within the rivers, and actually those one are one of the cause. So the solution toward that flood coming from the River Nile is actually to make sure we have a dike along the River Nile. And the second one is to make sure that we remove the debris within the River Nile, to make sure that the water level, to make sure that there's a flow of water. Because currently you find now that the water is actually not flowing within the river. And also the River Nile is becoming shallow because of the waste, which is actually being deposited within the River Nile. So these are some of the key issues that the government is actually doing. While at the same time, the government has actually been working in hand with the UN bodies and also with the international NGOs, while as with the local government. And it has actually encouraged that the local government has to take a lead toward this. Giving an example where I come from the area which is much flooded. And up to now, see, last year it has been a flooded zone. And what we do as a community is we have our own capacity as a local government or local communities. We do contribute by providing some of the empty sacks and fill those empty sacks with the sand. And these are the ones that we use for making the dike, the local dike itself. It has actually worked in most of the other part of the counties and some other part of Jonglei states. But because of the amount of water which is coming into the country, that we cannot bear that condition. And this is why the government has actually decided, instead of every time considering the local effort, which is being done by the local communities, the government has put it as a priority to address on the issues of these floods happening within it. While at the same time, the issues of soot, as it has been known that soot is one of the area which is classified as area of importance. And you know, the role that is being played by the soot is actually key. And that's why most of them, we have to protect the soot from any other destruction and also from any encroachment, either from different sources, whether from the communities being engaged within the suit. We have to actually to make sure that we actually protect the suits from encroachment and from destructions. And this is the key thing that has been done by the Ministry of Environment and also together with the Ministry of Water Resources to make sure that we protect the suit. While at the same time also we are working on carried out the inventory, the wetland inventory that will identify the key areas or maybe the important either living creatures or ecosystem within that. So it will be key thing that will actually come into that. The other one that I would actually like to respond is on the issues that have been asked by on the issues of the youth engagement or empowerment in terms of in the oil sectors, not only in oil sectors, but across South Sudan, not only in that place where we are having the oil, but the Ministry of Environment has actually created programs on youth engagement, and it has been named as youth and climate change, but it has not yet been launched. But coming to this, we are taking representative from youth to COP26. And also, we are also taking people from the local communities. We are taking people from the research, from academia, also from the government, from the NGOs, and also from our other UN institutions that are also going with us. And this time, I would actually like to inform you that the delegation of South Sudan is big. And it's the first time that we are bringing in the Minister of Finance to attend with us.
Okay.
They don't always accept, but this time they have accepted to come. And also the Minister of Agriculture is coming, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs is coming, the Minister of Road is coming, the Minister of Energy is coming, because these are the key issues that are going to be addressed under this. And this is why we want to make sure that the lead sectors which are going to be addressed at COP26, we have to make sure that they're all there. The other one that I would actually like to highlight is on the issue, what is the adapted capacity of South Sudan to improve climate adaptation and mitigation. One thing that I would actually like to say that in terms of capacity, you see the capacity is defined in so many ways, either in technical, in financial, or in technology. It is all capacities. But South Sudan is in a process to be in that position of being adapted to capacity. But we need some of the issues. As you know that the capacity is a process doesn't end. Capacity building is something that keeps on going. It is a process that does not end. And it is actually like the naps, as it has been said by George. It is a process, it does not end. And for you to be adapted to the climate change or to have that adapted capacity, there are factors which are actually considered, looking at the human resource, looking at the physical, looking at the financial, looking at different aspects, the 5 aspects of adaptive capacities that are key toward this. They have to be measured all. And the government has, in terms of finance, we have less capacity in terms of finance, but in terms of capacities, we can respond to that. And the government is making sure that it's establishing the early warning system in place so that we'll be in a position to respond to that. And the early warning system project, which is actually going to be supported, is actually going to be implemented between WMO and the ICPAC. And I think it is going to be led by ICPAC. Sorry to leak it out from here, but it is must that the $1 million will be given to ICPAC to establish the issues of early warning system within South Sudan. So this is the only thing that I could actually say. And thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you. You have even answered Tom. Whatever you've explained to us here covers Tom's concern very well. And thank you, John. I can see you still have about 10 or so minutes to be around. Don't disappear, just in case. Yeah, now we want to turn to Professor. Professor, you have some teething questions for you. Adisu Zeleke is asking, I'm not sure if it's not answered, but he wants to know, as per the NDC and the policy intervention in the livestock sector, include replacing Nandari cattle stock with the chicken supply side and inducing a demand shift from beef to chicken and so on. So it seems that it's very ambitious. And Prof, do you think this policy intervention could be achieved? Replacing Nandari cattle stock with chicken and also improve feeding to reduce emission from enteric fermentation through oil seed feeding, those two areas. Just a brief comment from you, Prof. Go ahead.
Thank you, Philip. Well, I think I understand the concern of the person who asked the question. It's not very simple to implement this ambitious plan, but it is doable. It only requires collective engagement. The development partners must come on board. The academia, researchers, and all civil society actors must be engaged. Otherwise, we are not only looking at the mitigation side of the benefit. There are co-benefits. That's why our CRG is mainstreamed along in the line ministries in our development plan. We do this not merely for the sake of reducing carbon dioxide emission, but also to address other challenges, to address nutrition and food security, and also to create jobs. It is very practical and achievable when you engage youth on chicken rather than beef because of the investment cost and other factors. So I think it is feasible and achievable. The only thing is it requires the engagement of all stakeholders. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Anne, I thanks for answering Milka Wanjiru. I hope Wanjiru is convinced and is comfortable with your answer. But probably, Anne, if you could shed more light. This is from my side, based on Anne Milka's question. We know that the African chair of AGN is our voice in COP matters, but we see countries developing their position very late. Like now we have few days to COP26. Some countries are still struggling to come up with their position, and we know it is a member states position that fits into Africa position. Do you have an idea on how prepared the AGN is going to COP26 as we are talking now? Anne.
Can I come in, Philip?
Okay, George, go ahead. You are in the same...
So you know, we need to be aware that the AGN has been in existence for a very long time. Way back in 2004-05 Montreal, and then in 2008 we had what we call the Algiers platform, where the agenda items are agreed and then a common position is crafted. But also you need to be aware that most of these agenda items are, running agenda items, and we have a decision by the AMSEN, the Ministers of Environment, and the CAHOSC, which is the Committee of the Heads of State and Government, who have already given direction on each of these key messages in this respect. And therefore, what the countries are doing actually right now is trying to, in addition to direction that has been given at the Africa level, they are trying to further elaborate how each of that agenda is or can be interpreted at national circumstances, so that when we are in the negotiations, what happens is that once whoever is leading on that agenda item under the African group of negotiators makes that general common position, then the parties, as parties to the convention and the Paris Agreement, then come into one, to support the common Africa position, and building on that position, they explain the national circumstances in relation to that particular agenda item. And therefore, that helps to strengthen the position. Because whereas at the Africa level, we have a general position, it has to be buttressed by the position by the country, which then explains the circumstances in which the country will have to address that particular issue. So I would like you to look at it from that perspective. But if you go to right now to the decisions that were agreed upon by AMCEN, you will see the key messages that on each of those agenda items, which have already been agreed upon by the ministers and CAHOSC, and therefore our role as negotiators is to ensure that we push those key messages supported by the circumstances of our countries and how they would like to see that implemented. Because at the end of the day, the decision is going to be implemented by the country, at the country level, not at the Africa level. I hope that helps, Philip.
Sure, it's really useful. And again, George, we will bother you a lot because you are holding a key position. I remember when you were training negotiators here, we had a similar concern to what Abdullahi Najib Ali is raising, the issue of finance. I would request that you shed more light, George, on this, because country seems not to be well conversant with the issue of finance. Just like Ali is putting it, he's talking of fair distribution or fair access to climate finance to respective African institutions. That is just given like that. Once you have indicated in your NDC about the conditional and conditional, you just be given finance. Probably you
no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, that is the tragedy that we have in Africa. One is that many of our countries have submitted the NDCs, and sometimes NDCs have been supported or developed by partners, and therefore to fulfill that requirement. But for you to access the resources, then you need to develop proposals and through the accredited entities. And the accredited entities may be direct, which is the national institution, or regional or international accredited entities. And that's the challenge we have, that because of the complexity of developing bankable proposal, you'll find that the accredited entities tend to determine which country they want to work with, and also the scope of the project. Because I've been involved in with some of the accredited entities, and you find that marrying the national needs and interest with the interest of the accredited entity requires a lot of negotiations, and so you find that sometimes that doesn't work. So that's one. So, and as a result of that, you'll find that many countries in Africa, some of them have never accessed climate finance because they have not been able to get an accredited entity who is willing to work with them and walk the journey, because the accredited entity is going to invest in some money in developing those proposals. And a rough estimate is that you require almost about $250,000 to develop a bankable proposal. But I also blame our national focal points because there is a window and the readiness window under the Green Climate Fund, where the country can actually request for readiness support to develop a bankable proposal. And I think that is the only way that it will ensure equity. But unless our countries take up that challenge, you'll find that quite a lot of them will miss out. And so, yes, you submit your NDC, and don't assume the NDC is going to be fully supported. It's upon you to develop proposals based on the priority areas that you've identified in your NDC, and then put up a proposal. But unfortunately, the proposal will require that you work with an accredited entity, most of them being international. For example, UNDP, UNEP, IUCN, all those European Investment Bank. In Kenya now we have NEMA, which is at 10 million level, and then you have the Kenya Commercial Bank, which is at a higher level. And in South Africa, you have Southern African Development Bank, and that kind of stuff. So we do have some in our region, but not very many. So one, climate finance is unfair, we agree. Number two, it's upon the country to put up proposals in order to access that money. Number three, developing a proposal is an expensive affair. You require an accredited entity who will also be willing to put in some initial resources to be able to prepare that Bangalore proposal. However, there is a window under the GCF where the country can request up to 1.3 million. Sometimes they need to help you develop the Bangalore proposal. So the ball is in our court. Let us not blame others. The ball is in our court. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. And member states, you can listen for yourself. What you need to work on is bankable project proposals. Now, I want if Anna is still with us, she wanted to leave. She has an urgent issue to attend to. Anna, are you still with us? I just wanted to give you opportunity.
She has just left, just now.
Yes, right now people are really, really busy. Even to have George, to have John here is a big sacrifice. But all the same, we thank you because this was very, very important for us. George, just Ali was talking about thinking of. Okay, let me give John. I can see him carrying up his hand before he leaves. John. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Philip, and thank you, George, for highlighting those such key issues under the UNFCCC negotiation. But you will agree with me too that on the issues of national focal points, that there's the question that responds to the national focal point that you have mentioned. You see, submitting this proposal to GCF is an easy process. But getting approval and getting that fund, it takes you a process. And that's why some of the things are not actually going through. So I was just actually informing you that in case there's another option that that we can get the money quickly for us to get that readiness without going that the channel that we know, then we'll actually really appreciate. So, but as for South Sudan, we have tried with our accredited institutions, and we are taking time to actually get the fund. So I don't blame the member states that they have not done anything to assess that readiness fund. They have tried all means, but assessing that fund is a problem. Getting it itself. You can submit your proposal. The proposal, you receive a lot of things within 3 years. You are not able to receive it. Goes for 4 years and you're not receiving. So thank you, and I'll be leaving.
Thank you very much, John, for that. I see no more question thrown to you, but thank you for your time, and you are free to attend to other issues that you mentioned earlier. Then we are almost winding up. We have 5 minutes to go. I just want to ask George to come back. There is a proposal of African Week. Some kind of a summit where Africans can prepare their house together, going to the global forum like what we are going to. Any comment to that, George?
Yeah. I think what we need to know is that there's already Africa Week under the UNFCCC, and we just went through it recently, and I know ICPAC and others were key players. And unfortunately, of course, it was virtual, so, and in our region, we have limitations on connectivity and the rest, so yes. But I think what we need to know is that, one, I like this process, Philip. I hope we'll continue with it under the IGAD, because our people, both technical experts and negotiators, need to interact. Some of the questions that we've gotten through this process helps the negotiators to pick some ideas which can then inform the negotiations. But more importantly, yes, those type of Africa Week, whether the one that's mandated under UNFCCC, or, for example, IGAD being a regional economic community, can actually convene a specific session or set aside some time when we have pre-SB meeting and also pre-COP meeting, because I usually organize pre-SB and pre-COP meeting of experts and the negotiators, particularly in the agriculture sector, where we normally craft a common position that is normally used for negotiations. And therefore, I agree with the colleague that has emphasized that, and I think I throw back the challenge to ICPAC and IGAD, so that we have this, because you occupy a very special space, unlike the other regional economic communities. ICPAC, you're very, very active in this region in terms of in climate information, sharing climate information, and given our vulnerability, so we are able to act based on science. And I think if we can work together to ensure that the narrative, and I think I want to repeat, the narrative of our region, of our IGAD region, is properly understood, so that anybody speaking from IGAD region is understood to be standing out for the vulnerability of the Horn of Africa and the challenges thereof, and therefore requiring that recognition at international level, and action will be very important. And of course, there was a colleague who asked me about loss and damage. Loss and damage is very important. We have two instruments there, the WIM and the Santiago network, but also there's a proposal that we could have a special envoy. For me, the fact that there's a proposal on special envoy is good, because like now, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and South Sudan, and others are going through, drought. If we had that kind of special envoy, our countries will be working with that special envoy to mobilize resources to support our countries to deal with those situations. So I know when we were in Madrid, there was reservations, but ask yourself, for those of you in negotiations, ask yourself, how come Paris Agreement was ratified too fast within 1 year? It's because the UN Secretary General appointed a special envoy for climate change to push this. And we can give you more examples. So for us, and my advice will be, a special envoy for loss and damage, in my view, would help, so that in event we have a catastrophe or an extreme weather event in our region, then our countries can work with that special envoy to mobilize the resources to address that challenge, as opposed to right now, where our countries are struggling to reallocate resources from other needy areas to address that challenge. So yes, Philip, I agree, and I support this process. Very useful process. I'm sorry we are in the middle of everyone of us is busy, but we had to create this space, because personally I think this process is important, and we ought to sustain it so that we get more people to understand climate issues and help move into implementation. And finally, Philip, is that next year is going to be more critical, because now we are hoping that we'll finish all the roadbook, those outstanding issues for operationalization of the Paris Agreement. We're going to finish them in Glasgow. And therefore, next year, we are starting implementation. Our focus is on implementation. And that's why COP27 has already been branded as an implementation COP. And so the issue we should be looking at, how do we implement our NDCs? What type of adaptation actions we're putting in place, and they must be supported by science. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you, George. Very, very productive. I just have one more that I will throw to you before we end. I see our time is gone, but I want to ask the remaining panelists, Professor Fekadu. I hope you are still on board. Professor, just last remarks, particularly issues to do with trees that Ethiopia is currently embarking on under the green economy, planting billions of trees in the country and also sharing neighboring countries' borders. Is there anything that you can just do say as you conclude your remark, Professor?
Sorry, we lost Professor.
Oh, he's no longer with us. Okay, thanks for that. George, parting shot, I just want you to comment briefly. There is an article that is appearing with the BBC. I don't know whether you have seen it, but the article says that there's a leak, some leaking information that there is lobbying. Nations are lobbying to change the key climate report. You know, we've had a global report. We also had recently the African report, but there are some rumors that behind the scene lobbying to change the report that came out, which is science, as you said in your introduction. Do you have some idea, or what do you say about it?
Yeah, Philip, what happens is that the science, the IPCC, since it was established in 1988, and its first assessment report in 1990, which led to adoption of the UNFCCC framework, has evolved. And within the negotiations, there are two things that happens. One, there are those countries that are very particular, concerned about what the science says, and therefore they have to find a way to disagree with the science based by IPCC and based on the other alternative science. That's the first group. And the second group is countries that recognize IPCC is important, reports are important, but they don't normally object adoption of the IPCC report, because then the science contained therein becomes the roadmap that must guide the actions that we make at international level. And that's why if you look at the IPCC reports on land and ocean were not adopted in Madrid. They were just noted, which means then it's at our level, countries can choose to use that evidence or not. But for us, I think as Africa and more so as the IGAD region, we must use those reports, scientific reports, to buttress our argument and the sense of urgency that is required if we are to live within the 2 degree or 1.5. And therefore, what I would propose to you, Philip, is that as we are moving towards the COP26, if ICPAC can come up with the key messages arising from the latest scientific evidence, will be very important, because one, it will help us to argue and defend our position on adaptation, especially on the global goal and the special needs and circumstances, but also it will help us in pushing for developed countries to increase their ambition, so that we can be able to achieve or remain within the limits of the Paris Agreement, which is especially 1.5 degrees.
Yeah, thank you very much for that challenge. We are lucky that we have our IGAD Executive Secretary making a statement already crafted, but because of the science, global and Africa, we are going to chip in that so that it reinforces that statement that is going to make. So we have basically come to an end. George, we wanted you to just make a last statement, a call of kind of action as the region. We are going to COP26. What would you say in 1 minute, a call and action that we go there with as a region and as individual countries?
No, I think for us, as part of the negotiating team for Africa, at this stage, Africa is in a very difficult situation, given what the science has said, and more importantly, the submitted NDCs, which appear to put us on a trajectory of almost 3 degrees and beyond. And that will be very bad for Africa. It will affect our economies, it will affect our livelihoods and everything else. And therefore, we need to ensure that the ambition is raised. And number two, that Africa is special needs and circumstances are recognized so that we are able to use that to leverage additional support to help our people and our economies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukoya. You've been really useful and supportive, even to the region as a whole. And we really recognize the work that you are doing in Africa and the world as a whole. Thank you. Keep it up. And as we are going to Glasgow, we are hoping to see you there. You told me you are traveling on 26th. When you are there, many of our people will get hold of you for some advice, expert advice, and I hope you will create time to meet some of us. Otherwise, thank you very much. And I want to thank all the other panelists in their absentia for their time. I want to thank all the participants, attendees that attended this webinar. Keep on attending. We'll have several of such in time to come. I also want to thank a team of communication team from ICPAC who have been working around the clock to make sure that we have successful engagement with the other people in the region. So thank you very much.
Philip, before you close, can I say one thing to you?
Sure. Go ahead.
There's this new area of cascading climate risks. I think that's an area that you may need to take up, because what that requires is, how do we deal with the risks that go beyond cross-border or transboundary? And I think that will be appropriate for IGAD, since you are looking at our region, and therefore it's already in the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report. It's emerging, but also it will be one of the discussions that will emerge at COP26. And therefore, if you can start thinking about that in the context of our region, that would be useful. Thank you very much, and sorry for interrupting.
No, it's really useful. I've taken a note, and thank you very much for that, George. We will continue to do that because we have quite a number of them going beyond the boundaries. And actually, if you look at ICPAC, we are an IGAD institution that is with 8 countries, but in terms of ICPAC member countries, we have Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi included, because of what you're saying, climate issues go beyond boundaries. So thank you very much, George, for that. Thank you very much, participants and listeners. We have come to a close. We have gone beyond our time by 9 minutes, but it was really productive. And have a good evening. Thank you.